Well, hello and welcome to Work Cookie, our weekly gathering of IOs, HRs, recruiters, and an actor or two as we try to make the world of work just a little bit better. And Nick, we're going to continue the conversation today. And today we're going to stream it a little bit more to the idea of you can cut through the noise, how recruiters can overcome challenges and job seekers can stand out, which is great because, I have no idea what it would be like to be a recruiter. I don't think I would enjoy it much, and especially now with AI, which seems to be going in a horrible direction. Um, and then, eventually we're all job seekers. And, even if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business, every time you meet a new potential client, it's another job. So, what are you going to bring for us today?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I know far too often there's the emotional ploy of the job seeker, and there's the desperation from the individual. And I think you see many posts on LinkedIn that start "Dear Recruiter" and then list a bunch of grievances. But they're not necessarily doing any better than the rest of us. Sure, they have a job and they have something to do, and the inequity between the job seeker and the job haver can be massive. But there are certainly challenges. Many are similar, but some are certainly going to be different. I did throw a few links in the chat, just kind of taking a look at the temperature of what are the recruiting trends for 2025, what challenges really are out there. There's a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of kind of holdover from 2024 going into 2025. And it kind of centers around what workers want, and a claim that the talent pool keeps shrinking. So now the recruiter has the greater challenge of trying to find the right person, the right fit, the right timing, all of that with a lot more noise. There seems to be kind of an arms race with AI. Organizations started using it to filter out applicants and find the right things. Well, now job seekers are doing it in resumes, and there are job search tools that have it just built in to make that customization that much easier. So you're getting kind of these, I don't want to say nonsensical, bullet points, but you're getting something that matches just a little bit too well, that's, kind of parroting the job description and not necessarily telling somebody what you can do. So, we've talked about AI ad nauseum on the podcast to some degree, and always kind of stress using it as an iterative tool to stand out as much as you can. But you want to use your own language, because if everybody's using AI, all of a sudden everybody sounds like the AI. And so that's one way job seekers can start to, really speak to, this is what I've done and this is how it matches the job. And so there's the idea that the internet was supposed to make hiring better, and it really hasn't, because you have these just volumes of applicants, people who are just chance chair, like maybe somebody will see it, maybe something will happen. And so you've got people who may or may not be qualified, who may or may not have even read it, or just clicked easy apply, and now you have this glut of applicants, and trying to determine whether or not they're qualified or not falls to more time, more energy, more effort. And then there's kind of the organizational dynamics too, where the recruiter may not actually know what the job does. They've just been tasked with, these are the qualifications we're looking for. They may or may not have a good sense of how it fits in the organization, what it does. I know that we've all struggled with the idea of, how do you describe industrial organizational psychology, because it is so broad and touches so many areas. So if somebody's looking for, an IO, and they have this job description that says data analysis, talent navigation, all these sorts of things, and they don't know what those terms mean, then they're struggling just as blindly as anybody else. And then, we'll go through bureaucracy of, well, what if the hiring manager doesn't have time for interviews? What if, they want the unicorn, or, they're not willing to bend on it. As we were talking before the recording started, job descriptions don't get updated, and it's the same problem on the organizational side as leaving your resume sit idle and having to update it just when you're on a job search. We really do need to look at, what is the role that we need for now, and what is the role we might need 6 months from now, a year from now, and how is that going to morph and change? So you see kind of a skills-based hiring trend happening, where you're not necessarily looking for the experience per se, but you're looking for the adaptability, the learnability, can translate AI, can do the data analysis, can, improve processes, gets along with people. And it's hard to identify, recruiting, if we said that job seeking is like the dating pool last week where you just kind of hope for the serendipity, well, then the recruiter is on a speed dating process. They're just looking at resumes and hoping for the best. So it's not easy for recruiters either. Because there's so many dynamics in the workplace right now. People want the flexibility of work from home or work from office. You have to identify that fit in addition to company fit. Wages and inflation, that's a topic that can sound very, very scary, but is the person getting what they're worth? And I think some of that is being combated with some of these salary transparency ideas, because you hear so many people like, I went through 8 interviews and I got to the end and they told me I was going to make 2 cents an hour. And I said, kick rocks, because there's a lot of time and effort to find out that it's not the right fit. And so I think there's so much happening so quickly that recruiting in particular is being impacted in numerous ways. And there's always going to be another challenge. But at the end of the day, it does come down to being the matchmaker, finding the right person for the job. And when I was recruiting for niche positions, I always found that was the best part of the job was I put somebody to work today. We got the contract, we got it through. And I think that is kind of the underlying spirit for a lot of people who are there. Yeah, I thought I had another thought. It just ran away from me.
Well, it sounds like seeking a job and love are both difficult. But let me ask you, because you kind of started off with, know what you're looking for when you're looking for a job. So, when I look for a job, the first thing I'm looking for is, the job. And then I sort of will go past there. But especially for the IO psychology students who may be listening, or IO psychologists who are looking for a job, what are the things, for example, that you're looking for when it comes to a position?
I think, we talked a little bit last week about, get clear, get specific, find your niche. If it's training, if it's data analysis, know what your North Star is. And that's not to say that you can't come across something else that might be a better fit in a term of serendipity, but, the being prepared is the greatest way to have those fortunate moments come up. So knowing what you want as a job seeker, whether it's I want to be fully remote and I'm not compromising on that. I need to make X per year to take care of my needs. I want to work for an organization that supports the environment. There's all these things that I think we're seeing more and more. The workforce is wanting work to work for them. So they want to connect to the organization. They want some of these things, Pizza Fridays are great, but pizza doesn't pay my bills. And so if we think towards being clear in what you're after and not just hinting at it in your resume, but being able to shout it from the mountaintops. I am a talent management professional. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do. And really, taking that moment to sympathize with the recruiter. Like I said, kind of at the top, it's hard to feel bad for them because they have a job and you don't. And when the process gets frustrating, they're easily, just the ones to pick on, the ones to go after. And so having that bit of empathy and just kind of that understanding of, hey, you've got a lot going on. If you have 2 seconds to tell me where I can sharpen my application, they know that a lot of people reach out just to ask for something specific, or say, tell me yes, tell me no, get me through the side door, get me through the process. But kind of warming people up instead of that cold call, being like, hey, what's the status of this application? They're like, hey, hope your day's going well. I know you probably got 1,000 applicants. I noticed this, and this. Hey, check out Work Cookie. It may help you out here. By the by, is there anything you can tell me on this? And just really cultivating that human interaction, knowing that there's stress and burnout, because the impact of unfilled positions is massive to organizations, both financially and culturally. I mean, if you've got a desk sitting open for 3 months and you have 2 people trying to do their job plus half of somebody else's, the long-term and ripple effects of those are lasting, and they don't necessarily make the ledger, so to speak.
Thank you very much for that. Dr. Matt, let's go to you.
Well, to build on so much of what Nick is saying, I mean, we're looking at two different sides of a similar uh, scenario or similar coin. I mean, even just in the title of the episode, how for the job seekers, how they can stand out on a crowded market, but then for the recruiter, how they can cut through noise. So just in that, we're acknowledging that the environment itself is chaos. So what's it look like to find a little bit of calm in that, to find a little bit of clarity, a little bit of grounding? And so much of what Nick shared on the recruiter side, to his point, it could be very easy to vilify the recruiter side or the employer side and say they're not doing their job, they're not finding me, they're making it hard, we're jumping through all these hoops, they're putting up AI blocks or ATS or whatever story you want to tell yourself. But the reality of it is they are individuals who have their job, and they are in that chaos, in that change as well. And so for that recruiter whose job is to bring in top talent, to find the best, and to, what can that individual that they bring in, how can they contribute to the company when the company is shifting its metrics, when it's looking short term because, hey, maybe the interest rates are higher than we want them to be, so we're not going to bring on 3 people this year, we're going to bring on 1, and you got to find the best out of that one. And because of the wonderful technology features that we have with AI, okay, great, I can use AI to help sort these. Well, but you know what? The individual can use AI to craft theirs, and now all of a sudden you get hit with 300 in resumes in an hour. How realistically, genuine question? How do you sort through that? You don't. How do you find the top candidate in that? You don't. And so, the recruiter, how do they cut through the noise? Whether we're talking about the recruiter side or whether we're talking about the job seeker side, to echo what Nick was saying, there's branding, both of yourself and of the organization. If you're the recruiter, branding what this position, what looks like, having clarity around that, communicating with intention. This is what we are seeking and what that means. But then also on the job seeker side, branding of yourself. This is who I am, and part of that also means, and I hesitate offering unsolicited advice, but if you're updating your resume with any job posting that's there, and your resume is changing significantly, are you actually positioning yourself as that niche expert or as that person who's competent on this content? Or are you actually positioning yourself more of as a chameleon? What is it that you want? Yeah, I can do that. What is it you want? I can do that. While that may get you that first look by the recruiter, I don't know that it's necessarily going to set you up as you go through the interview process to ultimately, what is the end goal here? What is the why behind all of it? Is your why to get in front of the recruiter, or is your why to ultimately get the job? And when you're constantly changing it to an extent of, well, at least this will get me in the door, maybe, but does it get beyond that? And how much time and effort have you put in? Has the recruiter put in? There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of chaos with that. Taking a moment to step back and look at the larger picture and say, okay, what is my why here? What is the best way for me to do this? And whether you are actively searching for a job because, hey, I just graduated, I'm unemployed, whatever it might be, or whether you're in a career and you have no intention to leave, there's power to networking with purpose and highlighting, the importance of authentic connections, whether that's with recruiters, hiring managers, peers, whoever it may be. Building those connections, not because, hey, I'm going to get to know Tom because I really want Tom to help me out with something, but let me get to know Tom because I want to get to know Tom. Tom's in this industry. Tom does these things. I want to learn more about that. Approaching that networking with curiosity rather than expectation of, I'm going to get something out of this immediately. And I see we have a number of other hands come up, so I don't want to take too much more time. But the other thought that comes to mind here, and I'll throw this out there for any of the listeners who are in that job seeking mode, who maybe they've been seeking a job for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. It's an extremely tough market right now. Obviously, as we've talked about this chaos and this crowded market, it's a tough job market on both sides, whether you're the recruiter and the employer side, because you're trying to get more work out of fewer new hires, or it's tough on the job seeker side that you're trying to navigate your way through a very crowded market with all these extra tools and everything that keeps changing from one day to the next. To those individuals that are out there searching and that have been searching for months on end, don't give up. Lean into those networking with purpose communities. Talk to your people. The CBOC has some great resources. There's a number of other communities that have some great resources. Lean into that to really explore, what is my passion? What is my niche? and what makes the most sense. You may not, that first job that you finally get or the next job that you get may not check all those boxes. Hey, but you know what? If you can slowly chip away at it, make progress. But again, leaning on those networks, that's how you stand out in that crowded market as the job seeker. And that's how you navigate that chaos as the recruiter is networking with purpose.
CBOC has become an incredible networking organization for IO psychologists. So if you're looking for work, maybe your job search starts here. Thank you very much for that. Lee, let's go to you.
The reality is the process is broken, and it has been for a long time. The hiring managers don't talk to the recruiters. They don't do the proper job need analysis. They don't update the job descriptions. The recruiters don't know what the job actually is, and it's not the recruiter's fault. And so as I think we talked to Matt, said, okay, I got 300 resumes. What can I do with 300 resumes? And that's just this out. The whole thing is, it's chaos. I think Dr. Matt said that too. Yeah, it's chaos. And so you can't always do this with intention. I mean, it's just an unfortunate fact. Sometimes you gotta find a job. You got laid off, something happened. Sometimes it's an emergency, and you got to do what you got to do. And it sucks. I've been there. First, let me say a job is important, period. Find a job, because once, Maslow's hierarchy, man, once you got the roof over your head and the food on the table, you can worry about the rest. So nothing wrong with survival job. Let me just put that out there, because so many people want to they want the job. We all do. Great. But make sure you're fed. Let me just put that out there. So don't let, perfect get in the way of good enough right now. So let me just get that out there. I mean, I think I said this last week, man. I heard when my kid graduated, and I heard the commencement speaker say, congratulations, you graduated. Find a job. Any job. Get a paycheck. So now, that said, once you have a job and it's not an emergency, cultivate the relationships. Do the networking. Do it with intention. Intention matters. Don't do it, for thing. And like I said, when I meet Tom, I want to meet Tom because I want to know Tom, because Tom's an amazing person, and not because I want Tom to do something for me. Maybe Tom will do something for me later down the road, but that's not my intention. My intention is because I'm building my network. And maybe my intention later will be because I talk to Nick. Nick says, hey, I need someone to help me with, public speaking. And I go, Nick, do you know Tom? So be that connector. And at some point in time, someone else will go, do you know? And they will connect you. Build those connections, those webs. You will be a line in someone else's web, and build those connections. I do it all the time. Somebody will contact me on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? I mean, the wonderful Linda Ann. I've sent several people her way because somebody says, hey, I need someone who can do this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, do you know Linda Ann? She knows more about HR than I will ever know. You should talk to her. And that's networking with intention. Do that before it becomes an emergency whenever possible. And we talked about the AI. Use the AI as a tool, not as a crutch. Absolutely. Use it to give yourself some bullets, some new words, some things. And Dr. Matt is so right. Don't be the chameleon. Focus on what you bring to the table. Don't try to be all things to all people. The old adage, master of all, jack of all, master of none. There's a place for a generalist, but that's not really what we are, right? We are specialists, in general. And you have a niche. You have something you bring to the table. You have something that you specifically bring. Your combination of experience and skills and education and knowledge bring to the table that only you can do. Focus on that. Bring that, because the world needs that. I mean, if I need what Nick brings, I don't need Dr. Matt to fill that spot. I need Nick to fill that spot. But I don't know that if Nick doesn't tell me that. So focus on that. At the same time, you know what we used to say in the Navy, Semper Gumby, man, always flexible. Be ready for the opportunities you didn't know you wanted. I mean, some of the greatest opportunities I've had, I had no idea I was even interested in. Somebody threw something out there and I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. That's amazing. Tell me more. So don't get so laser focused. Don't be the horse with the blinders on, running down that road as fast as you can go. Look around a little while. Be a Ferris Bueller. Stop and take a look around before the world passes you by and see what else may be around you. Don't get all wandered around where you're just missing everything, but look around to see. Yeah, and actually, and for those of you who are listening to this later, Dr. Matt just put in there about, being okay not knowing what your niche is yet. And guess what? Your niche can change. What you think your niche is today, that it may be today, but it may not be tomorrow. Or it may just be the starting of the path that's going to take you to your ultimate niche down the road. And the you 10 years from now will be absolutely, maybe even appalled that you thought that your niche today was going to be your niche, because the amazing things that you're going to do later. So give yourself the opportunity and the grace and the flexibility to be the you that you're going to be. And don't put yourself in that little box, because my God, there's not a box yet that can hold you.
There you go. Thank you very much for that, Lee. Emmy, let's go to you as you're copiously taking notes.
I am. I love this conversation, and I'm just a little bit of a book nerd, so I'm trying to just jot down even where I saw some things and want to go revisit later. But I'll kind of just build upon a couple of the things I heard here. I'll start with what Lee just mentioned there, as far as opportunities and not knowing what something might become, right? I just wanted to offer a little bit of a personal example there, because honestly, it's not always just, oh, I didn't know I was going to love this. You also can have the other experiences, which I absolutely don't want to do this, and it's equally valuable. I started my career in accounting eons ago, and I say eons ago because I haven't touched it since. And having, that financial experience is phenomenal for me. It has helped me be a better project manager. It's helped me be a better leader in a lot of ways when you're responsible for some of the financial elements of your job that maybe aren't the super sexy parts that you love. But I found out through that first job I had of accounting that I did not want to do accounting. And so that really helped actually inspire me to move into the IO direction, with discovering all of the things I really didn't want to do and all of the opportunities that helped me learn the things I didn't love, numbers being one of them. It's the reason I'll never be a baker. It's very precise. And I just don't really follow directions like that. That's, I think, why tax and accounting and all of that was just not for me. I'm all about the maybes, right, or the what ifs and that discovery that happens, I think, in the science realm of IO, right, in a very fun way. And so I also wanted to offer one of the words that I've heard here a few times is chaos, and one of its cousins is disruption. And a quote from Robert Scoble, who's a blogger and a technologist, that came to mind here that I wanted to share was, change is inevitable, and the disruption it causes often brings both inconvenience and opportunities. And I think that's the reality of kind of any change or disruption. It can bring both. But the concept of reframing, specifically in leadership in the workplace, is really, really a beautiful concept. And I saw it illustrated once in a way that really hit me deeply as far as the profound nature of reframing. And it was an actual image that had been reframed in two different places. It was a flower, and one had this gold and gaudy frame that had been placed on it, which, by the way, was my favorite. But then they showed this just plain simple black frame and then a white simple frame. And all three of these images were exactly the same within the same frame, but they looked so dramatically different, whether they were framed in the gold and gaudy and whether they were framed that way in kind of the white and the black. And I think that's really, when we think about this current market and where we are with job seeking and looking to reframe things as opportunities, there's one, this psychological impact that has on the individual, which can be positive, inspiring, help them in that sense of a really difficult place. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. People who have been out of work for 11, 12, 13 months at this point, right? Out of a full-time job that are having to piece together income in other ways. It is a difficult place to be, right? And people offer their love and their hope and their prayers and all of these really amazing things. But at the end of the day, the acknowledgement that it's difficult is number one. And then two, what are the opportunities that can be found in there for discovery? And I think that's been really something that is a challenge for a lot of people in the market right now, but where there is an opportunity, right, to kind of do that reframing and think about what can I learn here. And the biggest thing I think from a skills perspective, because that's the other thing I heard I wanted to touch on this is more even on the organizational side or on the recruiter side, our jobs are changing, right, at this point. And I think we don't only have to look at where we are currently, what the current business needs are, but there really is a need to look out to what the future needs of the organization are at. Now, that's typically not determined by a recruiter itself. It's typically determined at more the strategic leadership level, but working with your recruiting staff and your HR staff to help identify what the skills are of that next step that you're going to need for people in the organization, because jobs are changing, whether it's technology related or any other related. Just understanding that having a job catalog, even understanding what the skills are required for different job families within an organization. These are some of those practical things to really start looking into the future of work and saying, what are the specific skills required for my business areas that are going to be needed going forward? And that really can also help in your job descriptions, reaching out to folks who can kind of look in their toolkit of jobs and say, okay, I have done something like that here. This is a translatable skill from my accounting world. This is a translatable skill from this job I had as a data analyst, right? So just looking for those underlying skills needs to happen both on the organizational side as these jobs are changing, job descriptions change and grow. And then also it can help job seekers as well, just to make sure they're identifying their underlying skill sets. Because I promise, regardless of what jobs you've had, there are some powerhouse skills underneath that may not be written in a job description and may not be explicitly stated.
Thank you very much for that. Natasha, great to see you again. Let's go to you.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning to everyone, depending on where you're listening from. And so I think I want to, piggyback off of a comment Lee made earlier. And I recall when I graduated back in 2009, and I was told at my graduation ceremony, go and conquer the world. And I think about that sentence because that's a sentence that we still use at graduations, and we have a whole generation of Gen Zs that are graduating and being told to conquer a world that is very much chaotic, upside down, left upside down by the generations before it, by way boomers, Xers, millennials, etc. Looking around us, layoffs are still continuing to happen. And now we have this amazing platform. We have amazing platforms by way of LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and all the sorts, where now we have top voices that are all giving best practices when it comes down to applying for jobs. And the information all around varies per recruiter, by industry. I mean, it could be the same industry, recruiters in the same industry, but you have 10 different formats of best practices that people are giving, which is very confusing to a lot of applicants, not even adding the layer of AI already eliminating a lot of roles. And there are countless reports and studies on this, lawsuits against organizations wherein people who are more than qualified and for roles have been disqualified without even review based on, biases set up by an AI system. And I think one of the best advices that I like to give to job applicants is really understand who you are and where you want to land. And you might not know fully where you want to be, and that is okay, because this is where you tap in to say, what are your strong suits? And I always advise people to be a generalist of some sort, in that I'm going to say what I normally say, which is be a Jack or a Jeanette of all trades, but a master of 2 to 3. And the master of 2 to 3 are the 2 to 3 resumes, different resumes that you will have for the main thing that will be your income until you figure out where you want to be. And so it could be, and I'm more familiar with the HR role. So if you are a generalist and you have worked in all areas of HR, you have a great understanding of all areas of HR, what are your 3 strong suits and what are the 3 areas that you like the most? And so if it's benefits, if it is HRBP, or if it's talent acquisition, you have a resume for each of those 3. Designed specifically for those 3, and you apply for those jobs. And it does not take away from the fact that you have knowledge of all the other areas, because that generalist knowledge is what you will fall back on to be excellent at that one thing that you're hired to do. In a sense that when you're able to do so, it gives you a better North Star of, okay, you know what? I don't like this, and I think I'm leaning more towards the other thing, and apply for that other thing while you're in that thing. And so I would say don't get confused and caught up in the noises of what people are telling you that is the best practice, because oftentimes it's just their preferred way of working, and there's a whole world around that. Be a Jack or Jeanette of all trades, master of 2 to 3. You don't need to conquer the world, but find your place in this world, because it does exist and you belong in it.
Thank you very much for that, Natasha. Nick, back to you.
It's amazing to think that, the simple idea, skyrockets into so many different ways. I think as we talk about recruiters, let's be clear. There are a lot of great recruiters who are putting people to work. You see job descriptions, people are filling those roles. It may seem like you're screaming at the void when you fill out an application and they say, upload your resume and then tell me what's on your resume. And I think that there's kind of there's one branch point when you're doing a job search. Are you gatekeeping? Are you trying to just make it as difficult as possible so the people who are truly committed are the ones who get through and you see, or are you casting a wide net to find the absolute best person out there? And I think, some of the best recruiters I've worked with in the past have always been constantly recruiting. They're talking to their server at lunch. They're, at a cocktail party and with the antennae up. And so I think that is a good model there. And I think there's a habit, and I know I was guilty of it too, where you just get so focused in on the one job that you're recruiting for, the one task that's in front of you, that, even if you see the unicorn for position B that's, 3 items down your action list, you may not be able to connect those dots. So I think, being open and just kind of trying to pull back for a larger picture for the recruiter is one thing. But, again, preparation for the serendipitous moments that you come across in a job search for the job seeker as well. I mean, there's so many parallels between what good job havers should be doing to fill those positions are in parallel with what job seekers should also be doing. And everybody's trying to stand out as best they can. And I think there's this wonderful tension that, people are choosy about who they put in an organization. One, from the organizational standpoint, it costs a lot. Training, onboarding, you've got to hold that up against, how long can we hold that job vacant? And do you eventually just come to that satisfying point of this person has 80% of the skills, it's good enough, let's get him in the building. And, well, what if we hire this person and they're completely the wrong fit? I mean, the job market is never going to be without risk, because you can't know somebody completely, from even an 8-step interview process, which is a bit too much in my opinion. You're not getting more great information. And just as a warning to, organizations, as we look towards more skill-based, more personality things coming up, there is a compliance aspect. We have to watch out for bias. We have to be on guard for things that don't work. And there's a lot of people who will tell you that they do because they're trying to sell it. Even in doing research for this, you see top trends, from this recruiting firm or that recruiting firm, and it's good information, but they're also putting that sales pitch in the middle of the information they're trying to provide. So literacy, discernment, all of that goes into both sides of the coin, from, the recruiter reading a resume going, do they really have a PhD, or are they just saying something nice? People are going to rely on their resume. And that's an unfortunate reality, because, if you can't win, cheat is kind of where a lot of people get to. And you see that the tactics of putting the job description in white in the margins, and so it gets through the ATS and all that. So there's a discernment piece on the organizational side as well. And there's that risk, because we're dealing with people, and people are many faceted and chaotic. And at some point you do just have to say, this is the risk that I'm comfortable with, and be okay with failure. If somebody's in the job for 3 months and it doesn't work out, yeah, it stinks to have to spend that money, but now you know better what you are looking for if you have to go back out into the talent pool as well. And I think, again, pulling back and saying, okay, well, I'm hiring for a similar role. Can I go back to the stack of 300 applicants that I got last time and reach out, because it's in the system? And I think that's, again, using the resources you have to not have to restart the whole process over and over and over again.
Thank you for that, Lindan. Let's go to you.
So having experience with companies that utilize recruiters and talk to recruiters myself and various times in my careers and so forth, I think it's important that if you want to use a recruiter to help you find a job, you need to screen the recruiter to the same extent that they're screening you for that position. Because often the recruiter knows very little about the position they're putting you in front of the hiring manager for. And the way, they're looking for their paycheck. Their paycheck is 20 to 30% of whatever that salary is. Yep, it's a chunk, right? And so, and the guarantee on that placement is only 60 to 90 days. So in order for them to get that paycheck, you only need to be in that job 60 to 90 days. So that the motivation for them to make an excellent match is not there. So know that going in, that you need to, and I've had recruiters before tell me that when I interacted with them, this was years ago, about a job, that my questions changed the way she approached recruiting. And so I think it's important that you not look at them as a lifeline necessarily, but as something that you need to be discerning about as well. I mean, they're a great tool, but you need to be very discerning about that process for yourself, so that you're not wasting everybody's time and ending up in the wrong job. The other thing too is, as to what Lee was saying about the networking, it's incredibly important to continue your networking, whether you're employed or not employed. And I always say, I agree with Lee in the fact that you need to fill the well before you draw from the well, and make sure that it's not always with your hand out, right? It's a two-way street, and you're building that. And I remember years ago hearing this person who had, a very, very strong network and was cut from their job for whatever reason. And she let her network know, and she had a job by the end of the day.
Wow.
Yep. And to what Emmy was saying about the different resumes and so forth. And I've talked to, again, the Pathfinders on many occasions. And if you're changing your resume for every job, you're losing your mind. You're losing your mind. Make it really good. You can do some tweaking if you're gonna in your cover letter or whatever. But yeah, trying to customize your resume for every job, I've not seen where that's a big payoff from anyone. And just as an example of how to network or to let people know clearly what you're looking for, I was talking to a Pathfinder the other day, and he works for an organization where they hire IOs, and he's got 2 psychology degrees. He's going for his IO doctorate in a little bit. And I said, well, go let those hiring men or HR or whatever, because they have job postings for IOs right now. And I was like, go tell them you're interested, and see what you can work out right now. What can you qualify for right now that would make you either put their radar on you for as you go through this, or it might help you direct how you study IO. I know there's so many pieces of IO you can focus on, right? But yeah, communicate with the right people and let people know you're doing this and this is what you want. You have to be clear about what you want before anybody else can give it to you.
Absolutely true. And let me add, if you're looking to network and you're not good at small talk, go get The Fine Art of Small Talk, which is a small little book. It's great, and it'll help you out a lot. Thank you very much for that, Linda. And Dr. Matt, back to you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go look for that book. I'm not a big fan of small talk, but that's a conversation for another day. I like how Linda Ann was bringing in the external recruiter part of this, because I think so much of today's conversation, when we talk about recruiter, it's been from that internal role, or at least that's the way I've been hearing it. And so to hear that external, there's yet another factor or another layer. And really, when I think back on the conversations that I've had with different recruiters, different organizations, the best recruiters, the best job seekers are the ones that build the relationship. I would contend that we can always find chaos, or that we're always in chaos if we choose to see it as such. Chaos will change, and it's about how we approach and engage and relate to that chaos. So, the chaos now might be AI has totally sped up how we edit our cover letters and our resumes or apply for jobs. I was talking to somebody not too long ago, and they said they were so happy. They said, "Oh yeah, with this AI feature of this particular job board company," and I won't throw names, they said, "Oh yeah, I was able to apply for over 100 roles yesterday." I'm like, "What?" They uploaded their stuff to this, and the AI blasts it out as a shotgun approach. So that can be considered chaos now, and maybe the other chaos is that it's a very employer friendly market. The pendulum will swing back and forth, and a couple of years ago, especially during the pandemic, it was a very employee friendly market. You wanted to go find a job, you could find one pretty quickly. Recruiters were begging for people to come apply. That's going to change. That chaos is always going to change. And to Nick's point about constantly recruiting, to the same piece, whether you're on the recruiter in your side and you're constantly recruiting, or you're on the job seeker side, you're constantly job seeking, even if you don't want to leave your role. That's called networking. That's called that relationship piece. And I love how Nick talked about if you're just looking to fill this one role, you may miss the guy who the applicant who's a great connection for 3 roles down your list, but because you were so focused. And so having that relationship built in that larger perspective, some of the, talking with some different recruiters, some of the best practices that I've seen that they've done, it's the ones who have taken the time to call the applicant. They've checked in throughout the process. So if you move forward to the interview, maybe it's as simple as a quick follow-up email that says, "Hey, how did it go? How did you feel through that interview? I haven't heard anything back from the hiring managers, but I just wanted to check in to see how you were doing." And guess what? AI can actually help automate that. So you as the individual, as the recruiter, you can set those systems up where it helps you keep those relationships with your candidates, because you as the recruiter, it's in your benefit to get them hired as well. You want to do your job as well as you can, because otherwise you're going to soon be on the other side of that equation. You may not be looking to fill the role now, but if you have a role later on and that comes up, You've built that connection with somebody who maybe they didn't move forward, but you've built that connection. You understand what value they offer. 3 months from now, when you have a role that your manager says to you, "Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Recruiter, I need you to fill this position," you go, I talked to Nick 3 months ago. I wonder how that guy's doing. And you can follow back up. It's all about that relationship piece. And there's so much research that supports that notion of the power of relationships. And really what it comes down to is how you choose to approach and engage and relate to your environment, whether it's a chaotic employer-friendly market, a chaotic employee-friendly market, a calm market, whatever you want to call it. It's how it's recognizing, and I think it was Natasha, I think was maybe one that was talking about kind of grounding yourself a little bit and recognizing who you want to be and how you want to show up, both in the short term and in the long term. The short term, maybe that short term is I need to get that job, so that's your task. But in the long term, that's going to be those relationships that 3 months from now, when you aren't even applying or looking for a job, somebody says, "Dang, this is totally in line for Tom. Let me reach out to Tom." It's the network and the relationships that are built, not with the expectation of my hand is out, pour from your bucket, but how can I contribute to this bucket? Linda Ann, I love that analogy. I've heard a couple of people use that. You can pull from the bucket, but you also want to be able to give to that bucket as well. That's what keeps it going.
There you go. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Matt. Alexander, always good to see you. Let's go to you.
Oh, it's always good to see you too, Tom. This is an interesting question because I usually want to say that tech can help things. And oftentimes I think tech and HR or job recruitment and finding a job is almost hurtful. Like Matt was just talking about being able to upload a resume and then shotgun approach to 100 jobs. That not only doesn't necessarily answer the same question we've been talking about of what is it that you really want to do, because AI is not really going to know that, and it certainly can't answer that for 100 jobs. But it also makes it hard for everyone else who's applying for those jobs who might really be a good fit for that job. And so this is one of those areas that technology could be useful, but we have to be very purposeful in how it's applied. So I think top of mind for any company is our cultures, and what does our culture look like? Early on in this call, we discussed the fact that a lot of places don't necessarily do the job analysis and those aspects of the process that we know from tons of research for decades now is vital to being able to do strong hiring. And so I think it really does come, what is our culture? What do we want to hold ourselves to as expectations to be able to have a process that's rewarding for not only the company, but for everyone involved in it. And so that's really the only advice I can give.
Well, that's good advice, Alexander, if that's the only stuff you can give. But I just, as you were talking, is there any organization you've ever seen out there that when they're recruiting, might put out a job application going, "Hey, we're looking for an IO psychologist. Now let's talk about the culture you'll be walking in," and really promoting themselves through that cultural aspect? And wouldn't that recruit the best people?
It absolutely would. So I've seen something similar, but it wasn't actually for IO. It was actually just their applications in general. It was a UK, I think it was London-based tech startup, and it was amazing. Their application process was like nothing I've ever seen, and I wish every company did it. It was so detailed and so explanatory and customizable. They had even built on their website where you had the compensation and what it was looking like, and you could adjust it. Maybe you wanted more health benefits in this area or maybe in this way. And it showed visually how this was going to change. And so you really could apply this and really find the job that you were looking for and how you wanted it to look. And that sets that cultural expectation, right? I
Right.
have these skills, I can do this stuff, and this is what I want the job to look like. It was amazing, but it does take a little bit more work to obviously do that. You've got to have the time and skills of employees to be able to build that type of interface for your website. But I mean, there's tons of branding agencies who can do that for not something that's going to break the bank. So it just come back to that. You have to set the expectation of what do you want your culture to be and hold yourself to it.
And thank you for that. I love looking at those small tech companies, those startups, because
Yeah.
they've got some great ideas about, how work is changing. So we got to do a show on that. So thank you very much for that, Alexander. Emmy, back to you.
Thanks for that. I was looking at another chapter in the same book that I was at, and they specifically talk about reskilling with AI, and using it to reskill yourself as an individual, but they also discuss it from the organizational lens or even kind of the recruitment lens. And so I just saw another quote in here that I'll read. It's not that we use technology, we live technology. That's from Godfrey Reggio, who is a director of documentaries. And it's, I think, really speaks to the fact that we have to use technology in what ways. And I love that Alexander said being purposeful with it, right? And making sure we know that. The other element there is the personalization aspect. That's something that's really happening in droves in technology right now. We can personalize the use that we need for this specifically. From kind of the HR recruitment lens, being able to identify individuals, maybe even within your organization, that may be able to move to positions as well is another way that I'm seeing that sort of technology be used in a very human-centric way. That's the area that I really like to do research in, is what does human-centric mean, and how does it mean to elevate or what does it mean to elevate your people with technology versus replacing them with it, right? And so I think that's a kind of a fantastic way to think about personalization is, in that sense, is maybe even people who are already within your organization who may be growing into the roles that are becoming roles in your organization, and how to identify internal candidates as well. Because I think from the reskilling perspective, if you're missing a couple of factors, then you can use technology or, even just looking at the candidate and their underlying skill sets and say, with these two things that we can upskill this individual in, we can shift them into this new role internally even. So it doesn't necessarily just need to be an external candidate, right? You can even identify candidates within your roles that you have, and maybe that old role becomes a vacancy then, right? Then you go to fill that one. But having people on the inside be looked at as well is something I think that some organizations just have as a miss. They are looking often for very specific experiences without necessarily even considering people within the company that may have 80% of what they need, and they can upskill them and train them on the other 20%. And so I think that's a really good strategy there. And I think then adaptability is something I heard earlier that I wanted to mention. I recognized very recently, as much as I speak about change and adaptability and its value, that I struggle with this as an individual. My husband might throw a wrench in my day plans, and it's rough, and so that adapting to things as they come is really difficult for even the individual in your life, right? And so hugely difficult in the work environment when it impacts your job and making money and all of that. And so I just want to give it acknowledgement to that adaptability and change is difficult for individuals. So that's something to kind of also train yourself and train your people within your organization to be a little more flexible, because it will expand that skill set for them into their personal life even as well. So just being that kind of a person will help, I think, whatever the job market and circumstances look like, if you can have some flexibility there.
And if you're not good on your feet, go take an improv class. You'll get good on your feet really, really quick. There you go. Thank you very much for that. Rich, let's go to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. First of all, Emmy, my wife, just yesterday, she's like, you're building a career around change, and yet you hate change. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I like helping other people through it. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. But I when Linda Ann said the Pathfinders, I had to chime in because just shameless plug for CBOC, folks, right? The Society of Evidence-Based Organizational Consulting. If you didn't know that, the Pathfinder program, it gives you support, right? If you are a job seeker and you want to interface with people who are in the know, who are doing this as a profession, there's a panel of experts there. There's all kinds of support options for you as a member. So I highly recommend, and this is an unpaid plug, somebody who's gone through the Pathfinder program and remains a CBOC member, support the organization because I think you're gonna love it. It's a good ride. And the other thing I wanted to mention on that is related to recruiters, right? Build your network of recruiters. I'm on a first name basis with 24 now, something like that. And you never know what's going to happen. Right now I'm in an ODOE consulting role that came through recruiting from somebody that I had spoken to a long time ago. And you just never know where it's going to come from. And don't be afraid of those. If you're especially if you're in between jobs, don't be afraid of the contingent work, right? If you got a temp job you can take or whatever, that do it, get some experience, and keep the feelers out. That's all I got.
That was a very good one. Thank you very much for that, Rich. Linda Ann, back to you.
So just to the comments about change and how much change there is in our world today, and that is, we don't live in a static anything anymore, right? It is just constant change. And so as you go through, whether it's you're working with your team members or you're setting yourself up or however you want to see that, as you go through your emotional intelligence development and moving yourself forward in that, pair that with resilience training. And that can be for yourself or with your team, because that resilience is going to help you get through all those change with minimal or at least less psychological trauma, whatever that is, how it affects you. So really bone up on the resilience training aspects of things. The other comment I wanted to make was, if you are an internal recruiter, right? And we all, especially in whether you're in HR, I used to be in marketing, where every day you had to prove the value of your existence. Use the metrics for proving your value of the 20 to 30% of everybody you place internally, right? If you have saved that company that money, because that's how much it costs to recruit from the outside. So use that metric. If you're looking at placing people who are $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, because that's where most of our salaries are these days, every time you place somebody, you are saving that company 15, 20 grand.
Well, and I agree with you. Change is good for you. It's just sometimes it's a little like broccoli. It's hard to get down. Thank you for that. Nick, I see you're still with us. Our hour is just coming to a wrap here. And I think we've done a pretty good job of cutting through some of the noise. Any last comments? Oh, it looks like Nick might not truly be with us. So there we are. Thank you very much for attending with us again. We're going to be back next week. We do have a show coming up on December 19th. Your job hiring and hunting tools unpacked. What works, what doesn't, and what's coming. So once again, if you're looking for a job, or if you're just interested in the field, or if you're an IO psychologist, make sure that you join us every week. We're here at 12 noon Eastern. You can join us live and share your voice like all these amazing people do every single week. So thank you very much, everyone. Hope you're having a great holiday season as we just get into it. And hopefully you'll be with us over the next few weeks. If not, it could be just me here. So thank you very much, everyone. And we'll see you in 1 week's time. We'll count you out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.